No, I feel like it was like that for a lot of us. It's easier for me than it was for Tom because I wasn't playing a character that had already existed in the previous films.
But what was interesting to me about him was he had 3 Michelin stars and he was still trying to learn how to get better.
Disney's Snow White remake was supposed to be a sure thing, an iconic story reimagined for a brand new generation. But instead of guaranteed success, this project has ignited some of the most intense backlash the studio has ever faced. A once magical promise of enchantment has morphed into a swirling storm of controversies, boycotts, and skyrocketing budgets. How did we get here? From the surprise casting of Rachel Ziggler to the heated debates over the Seven Dwarfs, it seems like every decision has stirred fresh outrage. Yet, this is only scratching the surface of what went wrong, and whether Disney can still save this wreck before it's too late. Snow White holds a singular place in Disney history. Released in 1937, it wasn't just the studio's first feature-length animated movie. It was a watershed moment that introduced audiences to a new kind of cinematic wonder. Generations grew up on Snow White's gentle optimism and the dwarfs' delightful quirks. This film's success built the very foundation of Walt Disney's empire, proving that animated fairy tales had an enormous future on the big screen. For decades, Snow White stood as an untouchable classic, revered for its timeless quality. Everything from its charming artwork to its iconic songs has been woven into pop culture worldwide. That's why, when Disney announced a live-action Snow White remake, fans simultaneously felt excitement and trepidation. Some looked forward to modern visual storytelling that could add fresh layers to a beloved fairy tale. Others feared that too many changes would strip away the magic that made the original film endure for almost a century. At first, expectations ran high. Remaking a fairy tale so deeply engraved in people's hearts gave Disney a chance to honor that heritage, while also introducing Snow White to viewers who've never seen the animated version. Yet this legacy was about to be tested by one bold decision.
That would be my preference as well.
Why your preference?
Well, look, I'm going to be 72 years old tomorrow. I've put in almost 50 years. There are other things in life that I'd like to do. I also am confident that the board will be able to identify an able successor.
Casting a rising star whose outspoken views would soon collide head-on with the story's cherished traditions. When Disney revealed Rachel Ziggler as the new face of Snow White, it felt like a fresh choice. Ziggler was riding a wave of acclaim for her breakout performance in West Side Story, and many assumed she could breathe new life into the classic character. Yet, before filming even wrapped, her public remarks about the original movie being outdated ignited a frenzy across social media. Suddenly, fans who had grown up adoring Snow White took Ziggler's words as an insult, interpreting them as dismissive of a cinematic treasure. The controversy only deepened when clips of Ziggler's interviews circulated online, showing her doubling down on the idea that the 1937 film was no longer relevant. Critics felt she was belittling the significance of a story that paved the way for nearly every Disney princess tale to follow. Supporters, on the other hand, argued that she was simply advocating for a more modern interpretation, which is nothing new for Hollywood reboots. This uproar echoes other Disney controversies, such as the fierce debates around the live-action Little Mermaid. In that case, some fans objected to the casting of Halle Bailey, while others embraced it as a necessary evolution of beloved folklore. But the outcry over Rachel Ziggler was different. Her words weren't just about her role. They also directly challenged the very heart of the original Snow White. Soon the conversation grew more pointed. Did Disney choose an actress who fundamentally disrespects the film she's meant to bring to life? Or is the outdated label simply the harsh reality of updating an 80-year-old storyline? As the arguments heated up, something even more perplexing emerged: the new dwarfs themselves. And that, in many ways, proved to be an even bigger flashpoint for fan outrage. At first, audiences expected to see the Seven Dwarfs lovingly translated into human actors, complete with Dopey's playful innocence and Grumpy's charming pessimism.
Anything that has to do with technology creating opportunity for us, I find very enjoyable. The creative process at its highest level is at times frustrating, but often, and fortunately for us, really enjoyable.
That's not what happened. Early reports suggested Disney would be dramatically revising the dwarfs, and leaked on-set photos seemed to confirm a strikingly diverse ensemble instead of the 7 classic characters. Fans accused the studio of tossing tradition aside in favor of what they perceived as performative changes that felt forced rather than organic. Disney claimed these decisions aimed to avoid negative stereotypes. Yet that explanation didn't sway longtime devotees, who argued that the dwarfs are integral to the story's heart. It's one thing to update the telling, it's another to reshape core elements so drastically that they barely resemble the original source. These kinds of heated debates over representation and authenticity have dogged several reboots. Warner Bros. Faced a similar backlash with their recent Velma series, where updates to the character lineup enraged certain segments of the fan base. Even Ghostbusters 2016 saw fans feeling their nostalgia got trampled under the weight of an entirely new direction. Every time, studios insisted their goal was to refresh a dated idea. Yet, when changes appear to overshadow the essence of what people loved, it can come across more like corporate box checking than actual storytelling innovation. But while the dwarfs cast a bright spotlight on creative changes, it was the ever-growing production budget that would send alarm bells ringing across Hollywood. After all, if this updated Snow White was meant to be a surefire hit, how could costs spiral out of control so quickly? And how could Disney possibly recover if audiences ultimately reject it? Producing a live-action fairy tale spectacle is no small feat, especially one that's supposed to resurrect the charm of a film made almost 90 years ago. Even then, few anticipated the reported $300 million price tag attached to Snow White's remake. Initially, that budget was justified by elaborate set pieces, CGI enhancements, and the star power needed to attract global audiences. However, as the controversy grew, so did the expenses.
When a creator has pitched you a great story and you've given them the ability to go out and tell that story, you've given them the resources, the money, the tools, the place to tell that story, that story is...
Alleged reshoots alone might tack on an additional $10 or $15 million, pushing the film even deeper into the financial danger zone. Reminiscent of Disney's past big-budget catastrophes, like John Carter, there's a looming fear that if Snow White 2025 bombs, the studio could be staring at a devastating financial loss. And the stakes go beyond box office earnings. Think about the merchandise: dolls, plushies, costumes, and an endless stream of tie-in products. If public sentiment has turned toxic, no amount of marketing spin will move that inventory. Disney might end up with warehouses full of unsold products that drain company resources. These concerns ripple outward, triggering questions about the future of Disney's entire live-action strategy. The formula that once worked so well with Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella might be losing its shine. If fans no longer trust the studio to handle these retellings respectfully, each subsequent remake risks stumbling right out of the gate. That's a terrifying prospect for Disney executives who've banked on nostalgia-fueled remakes to churn steady profits. And yet, even with that enormous budget in jeopardy, the controversy shows no signs of cooling off. In fact, it escalated to the point where Disney's marketing efforts became the next flashpoint for intense debate. A powerful marketing campaign can rescue a film from lukewarm expectations, but in the case of Snow White 2025, it might have done more harm than good. Early trailers showcased the new dwarfs and teased big changes to Snow White's motivations, but they also highlighted exactly what worried longtime fans. Instead of calming the public's fears, the promotional materials seemed to confirm them. The message felt less like, "We love this classic story and want to share a new perspective."
is not designed right now to necessarily develop great leaders or to encourage more people to seek public office. It just is far more difficult. Now, I've never been in it, but from what I observe, it's far more difficult to run for office today than ever before.
And more like, here's a completely overhauled version. Take it or leave it. That combative tone brought back memories of Ghostbusters 2016, where anyone voicing hesitation about the film's direction risked being labeled as resistant to progress. The strategy backfired spectacularly, turning potential viewers into vocal critics. Similarly, some Snow White fans who merely had questions about the dwarfs or the updated plot found themselves lumped in with toxic online trolls. The result? A loyal fan base felt brushed aside by a studio that seemed unwilling to engage with nuanced criticism. It didn't help that Rachel Ziggler's remarks kept fueling the flames. Every new soundbite about how she viewed the original film as regressive felt like a personal jab to those who cherished the 1937 classic. So, on top of marketing missteps, you had the star of the show routinely stating that the beloved source material was, in her words, basically archaic. That's an explosive combination, and fans reacted by threatening to boycott. Petitions circulated online, Outraged hashtags trended on Twitter, and YouTube videos dissecting the potential downfall flooded the platform. But it wasn't only Ziegler's reputation on the line. As Disney rushed to repair the damage, the entire project seemed to be in a desperate scramble to regain control. This wasn't just fan speculation anymore. There were real signs of panic happening behind the scenes, with rumors of major reshoots, a shakeup in the marketing department, and frantic efforts to salvage a film teetering on the brink. Hollywood can be unforgiving when a high-profile project sours, and Snow White 2025 is no exception. Insiders report that Ziegler's outspoken criticism of the original film has made some producers hesitant to cast her.
She's my best friend, and she's the one who sent me the casting notice and said, "Thank me when you're famous." It's the craziest thing ever that it came true in that weird way, and that's why I bring her everywhere, and she's the best ever. But yeah, I put myself on tape. It's the worst tape you've ever seen in your life. I have no idea how I got the part still. And it's being used to teach future casting directors at NYU.
Fearing she brings more controversy than star power. That might sound extreme. Actors share personal opinions all the time, but the entertainment business is famously cautious when negative publicity starts eating into profit margins. This predicament mirrors the dramatic downfall of Katherine Heigl. She famously upset industry players by criticizing her own projects, leading to a steep decline in major roles for years. Now, some speculate whether Ziegler's apparent clash with a Disney cornerstone has created a similar black mark on her resume. With so many other talented performers out there, studios might opt for safer choices rather than risk the baggage that's now attached to her name. Yet, it's essential to remember that Ziegler isn't the only one potentially facing a career shift. Directors, writers, and executives behind Snow White may find themselves associated with a film that could become a cautionary tale in modern cinema. Disappointing remakes often lead to studio shakeups and reorganization. A single project of this magnitude, if it fails, can trigger a domino effect, leading to a reevaluation of everything from casting processes to script approvals. And if that seems like an overreaction, consider the scale of Disney's brand. They've spent nearly a century crafting a family-friendly image and delivering stories that resonate across generations. A high-profile flop that alienates audiences doesn't just sting financially, it chips away at the trust that once made Disney a global powerhouse. As the controversy rages on, the question looms, can Snow White 2025 be salvaged, or has the damage already sealed its fate? Nobody expected a remake of Snow White, a story about innocence, friendship, and love triumphing over evil, to spark such a volatile cultural clash.
The rice has to be body temperature, and if it takes too long to serve it, it's no longer body temperature. But what was interesting to me about him was he had 3 Michelin stars, and he was still trying to learn how to get better, how to be better.
Yes.
And I showed that to executives at Disney.
But here we are, with one of Disney's most revered classics now tied to accusations of forced modernity, disrespecting tradition, and marketing blunders on a massive scale. Industry experts wonder if this fiasco will finally prompt the studio to change course. Disney has earned billions on live-action retellings of its animated library, but recent years suggest audiences are less patient with these reboots, especially if the soul of the original seems lost. Instead, many viewers gravitate toward fresh animated stories like Frozen, which prove there's still plenty of room for original fairy tales that introduce new characters without overwriting old ones. Could Snow White 2025 be the tipping point that convinces Disney to steer away from expensive remakes and refocus on imaginative, heartfelt storytelling that doesn't rely on nostalgia? Another layer to this crossroads is balancing updated social values with the timeless elements that made these stories beloved in the first place. Many fans don't object to giving characters more agency or reflecting modern diversity. They just want it done in a way that enhances the narrative, rather than overshadowing its core charm. The core charm of Snow White was its simple, uplifting theme: a pure-hearted heroine surviving against darkness with the help of loyal friends. If that blueprint gets buried beneath corporate agendas and loud critiques, no wonder audiences react with frustration. Disney's next moves will be critical. If the studio can somehow unify fans under a revised vision, one that respects the 1937 film's essence while introducing logical updates, there might still be a chance to break this cycle of reboots gone wrong. But if they keep doubling down on approaches that fracture their fan base,
The board was making a decision to make a change at the CEO level at Disney, and that they might ask me to step back.
And you say to her?
And I said to Willow, I'm getting this call. It's possible that I could get asked back.
future remakes might suffer the same fate. And that's a chilling possibility for a company that built its empire on the promise of stirring dreams, not sparking discord. From a fabled legacy to a polarizing modern remake, Disney's new Snow White has become one of the most contentious productions in recent memory. At the center stands Rachel Ziggler, whose open disdain for the original film lit the fuse on a fan revolt. Surrounding her is a swirl of criticism about the dwarfs, a swollen budget that threatens to shatter records, in the worst way, and a marketing campaign that seemingly poured gasoline on an already roaring fire. Each misstep has compounded the challenges, raising doubts about whether this movie can ever recapture the goodwill of the audiences it needs most. Yet, within this chaos lies a rare opportunity. If Disney uses the Snow White 2025 debacle as a wake-up call, rethinking its approach to remakes and recommitting to respectful storytelling, it could reforge the bond with fans that made the studio an entertainment titan in the first place. If not, the wreckage left behind might tarnish Disney's brand for years to come, fueling a weariness toward reboots and overshadowing any potential for future live-action success. In the end, perhaps the real question is whether Disney can rediscover the spark that turned a young princess's story into an enduring legend. Snow White once symbolized hope, love, and the triumph of goodness over cruelty. Only time will tell if this new version can tap into that same magic, or if it remains a cautionary tale of what happens when a company loses sight of why people love the story in the first place. What do you think? Is there a way to salvage Snow White 2025, or has Disney drifted too far from the source to ever regain the audience's trust? Feel free to share your thoughts below and let us know what kind of video you'd like to see next. After all, these debates aren't just about one movie. They're about the future of storytelling and who gets to decide the shape of the stories we pass on to the next generation.